stress, depression, anxiety. That's what we're talking about today on Lakeshore Focus. Please stay with us or I will be so depressed.
Programming is supported by NIPSCO. Today's young minds are constantly reimagining what our world will be like tomorrow. That's why NIPSCO is upgrading its infrastructure now, so we're ready for whatever comes next. More information at nipsco.com/future.
Welcome again to Lakeshore Focus, a weekly show highlighting the key issues, important events, and interesting people in our region. I'm Keith Kilpatrick. Did I just say my name wrong? That stresses me out. It's the anxiety of always getting the script right. I knew I'd mess up. This is so depressing. Well, I think I just personalized our show today. All of us face stress, anxiety, and depression at different points in our life. You watched me experience all three a moment ago. What a great topic idea. To help me and perhaps you, our viewers, we have with us two licensed veteran therapists who deal with these issues daily, with clients, of course. Let's meet Jim Berman, a private practice therapist at Silhavy Place in Valparaiso, and Susan Braymeyer, who is a therapist with Regional Mental Health Center. Were you both ready to kick in and help me out there?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We want to help you, Keith.
Which did you want to focus on first, the stress, the anxiety, or the depression?
Well, I think.
Go ahead.
I was thinking you probably need to deal with all of them. I can't imagine coming and doing this show and keeping it together, the stress and getting it right. It's a lot of work.
It is stressful sometimes. It is. Were you going to jump in and help me too?
I think the stress.
The stress part.
The stress.
It's the stress of it all.
Well, the stress contributes to the anxiety and the depression. It's all of that stuff, and it just feeds off of one another.
Well, I'd like to get into this subject today, and you both actually deal with people with acute issues, and people just kind of come in every day with like, man, my life is stressing me out. I'm kind of depressed about things or whatever. So I kind of want to stay more to that, what almost everybody experiences. So is that really true? Does everybody kind of experience those things?
Absolutely. Our lives are busy, and busy lives make people stressed.
So if people are not busy, does that mean they're not stressed?
Not necessarily. I think, one of the things that I've learned is that for most people, they see their day-to-day existence and there are things they have to do, their responsibilities can become overwhelming. And I tell people sometimes it's sort of like a cold you might get at the change of season or an allergy, and you feel a little under the weather, you feel not quite yourself, you're finding yourself being a little off your mark. And the real issue is how do you adjust your needs, adjust your feelings, make your priorities before it becomes really clinical or becomes too much to handle without the care of a mental health professional.
Do people really notice that soon enough, or do you kind of see them after they've really kind of gone over the edge a little bit? I mean, my impression is people aren't really good about walking in and going, hey, it looks like I'm starting to get a little down about something.
I feel that people's lives just keep them going, and it's one thing leads to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and before they know it, they've got too many things on their plate. There's too much going on because people have a hard time saying no. And when they don't say no to something, they just take it on and they do, okay, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. And it's one thing leads to the other, and then they're stressed. And I don't think that they realize it's happening when it's happening, because that's just how they function every day.
Just eventually it gets some sort of overload for them. Could you each give me maybe an example of maybe kind of the average, if there is such a thing as an average anonymous example of somebody walking into your place and...
Right now, the one that first comes to mind is I am working with a woman who's in her mid-30s. She has two small children. She's married. She's been married just about 4 years. They both finished graduate school actually just last year. And, they've relocated to the region and trying to fit everything together. They have jobs, they have a new house, they have a dog. They have a child that's, got some chronic ear things, and...
So why did she What prompted her to come to you?
She came to me because she just said, I'm sitting up at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, and my brain is just going continuously, and I'm worried about, am I getting my work done? Am I, being everything I need and want to be for my husband? Am I involved in my church enough? My kid is crying, the house isn't clean. And, what I had to say to her is nobody can handle that much stress, or that many obligations and commitments. And really, in rather short term, was able to start identifying what are the priorities and where are the things that you can sort of eliminate or cut back on. And also some cognitive kinds of statements about accepting that her condition is overwhelming.
So kind of like you were saying, just overwhelmed in many ways. What's your example? Something that maybe it's a little different. Somebody walks into you.
Well, one example that would come to mind, again, it would be a woman, late 20s, early 30s, raising kids, has kids in all different levels of school, some in middle school, grade school, some at home, just doing, running kids here, running kids there, trying to find a way to work and make a couple extra dollars to help support the family and just provide for some of the little extras. It just makes it really hard.
Is that stress, anxiety, or depression? Which is it for her?
For her, it's stress.
Okay.
But it leads to anxiety because she's worried about where do I need to be and when, and how do I be at two places at one time, and if I have to get this child over here while I have to get this one over here. Let me think about how I can do that, and she doesn't have the support that she needs.
Is that a normal sequence that you kind of feel stressed, and eventually it creates anxiety for you, and then at some point, if you're not dealing with it, you get depressed about that? Is that...
I kind of, sometimes I think of them as opposite sides of the same coin. I think the stressors and the things that we're committed to do certainly are what facilitates the reactions, whether it's anxiety or depression. We haven't talked much about depression, but it can start with just feeling kind of irritated, agitated, having restlessness, difficulty sleeping, sometimes difficulty with simple concentration. Frequently with men, they'll find themselves being a little sharper or edgy. I've had some men come in and say, my daughter came in and said, "Daddy, can you help me? My doll's arm fell off." And, he said, he was grumbling under his breath, "Why'd you do that?" And he said, "It's, my 4-year-old daughter." So it's learning those sort of warning signs, for either depression or anxiety. But.
So you both give examples of women. But now you're talking about a man. So what's the difference between, do women always kind of have this, like, I'm raising my kids and I'm all stressed out about this? Are men slower to come in? Do they have same kind of issues? How do you see it?
I think it's mostly just about the role they play. Women are still typically raising children at home, not always.
Even if they're working?
Even if they're working. Men suffer from depression too, so it's not just a woman's disease. Men have a hard time too. They sometimes show it in different ways. Sometimes it's, like Jim said, sometimes it's irritability. Sometimes it's substance abuse is the way that they cope with it. Depression, it's an equal opportunity offender. It offends both genders, races. It affects all people.
So how does anxiety manifest itself for people? Because it seems like I hear a lot more people saying, "Man, I am so anxious about stuff, and I'm taking some medication because I'm anxious. I can't. I come up on these situations and I can't think. I can't function because I'm so anxious." Where's that coming from?
Anxiety is manifested along sort of a continuum. It can be anything from irrational thoughts, difficulty with concentration. Sometimes people feel it physically. They feel their heart is racing. They feel sort of paralyzed. I have a gentleman I'm seeing with a fairly severe anxiety disorder. And, he begins to perspire when he's challenged at work, or he's afraid that his boss, isn't happy with his performance. It can be a full kind of continuum of reactions.
Is anxiety fairly circumstantial, or is it just kind of like I'm anxious about everything? Or is it more like I'm anxious about getting in front of people?
It can be either specific or it can be what we call globalized. You know, and it tends to be much more initially in the early stages situational or related to a relationship or a context. But as it progresses, it can become more globalized and encompassing.
What do you see more of, Susan? What do you see more of? Is that global or very specific anxiety that people have?
I see more globalized anxiety. People anxious about everything or not sure what they're anxious about. When people are anxious about, when they have a phobia, when they're anxious about, say, flying, or say they don't like spiders, you know, they know, okay, well, I just won't go take a flight. You know, I'll drive wherever I need to go to, or I don't need to worry about spiders. But when it's something like I'm nervous around being around people, well, we can't not be around people.
Are you born with these things, or do you learn these anxieties?
Sometimes it's both.
So, I mean, you can
Sometimes it's
just
both.
naturally kind of have this propensity to be, you're genetically
There can be
anxious?
some predisposition, is what the research shows, as well as, you know, exacerbation by environment or triggers for people.
What's the most difficult person for you to deal with who, again, falls in any one of these categories? What's the most challenging one for you?
Oh, the most challenging person. Somebody who doesn't really want to make a change.
Why'd they come then if they don't want to make the change? Why are they there?
Somebody has pushed them to do it.
Okay.
A family member, a loved one, who has said, you need to do something about this.
So they walk in and say, I really don't know why I'm here. I didn't really want to come anyway. There's nothing wrong. But I came to make my wife happy.
My wife thinks I have a problem, or my husband wants me to come.
So that's a real hard spot to start from because they don't even recognize they have any sort of problem.
Right.
Do sometimes they not have the problem? You think it must be your spouse or somebody else who sent you here? Do you ever run across that?
I won't say that that's never happened.
I would think you could say, you seem pretty normal. What's the other half of the
process.
equation here that's got you in this place? What's really difficult for you to deal with, Jim?
You know, I think the one thing we haven't talked about that occurred to me is also depression, anxiety, stress is also developmental. And you know, in my practice and my work over the last 25, 26 years, I've worked with folks anywhere from teenagers up until their early 80s. And I think one of the things, you know, we talked about initially is, you know, the young mother or the new parent or, you know, people in sort of early and mid-career. One of the things that I am really becoming cognizant of, and maybe it's with my aging, is, you know, what happens for people in their 60s, 70s, 80s. How do you find relevance in your life? Where is there meaning when, you know, you're getting older and your friends and family are deceased? What is your purpose? Those sort of things can also be, you know, a series of issues.
Who's your most difficult to deal with? I mean, just when they walk through the door and they start talking
I
about,
think
this is hard.
well, what I would say often, one of the ones that's really, it's two, is individuals who are using substances, whether they're diversion of medications or drinking or perhaps illicit drugs to deal with either their anxiety or their depression. Because really, in that case, we're dealing with two very significant issues that have to be, you know, co-occurring and treated in a co-occurring manner. Those are tough. And the other one I would say is sometimes people really do need to be referred to a physician for an evaluation and medication, and there is a lot of stigma for some people about doing that and perceptions of what medication is and isn't.
Is there anybody that you would turn down or refer out for any reason when they walk in to you?
Somebody who might not be ready for therapy. Like Jim said, if somebody needs to be stabilized on medications first, I would encourage them to get stabilized on medications and then come on back in. Therapy is a wonderful thing. It's a great tool. It's not the only tool. And if somebody is able to get some of the anxiety stabilized, tampered down, they're going to be able to have more success in therapy.
Talk a little bit about the balance, because I know this is one of the stigmas or concerns about going into counseling, and I've even heard these stories, like I've been going to my counselor now for 3 years, and I was like, really, and it's just like, I think they're having me come back because I'm a picky, I'm a source of cash flow here
Sure.
for you. So how do you balance that off between you're trying to make a living and doing this? Now, you're private practice, so you definitely got to do this. You're probably salaried where you work, but there's probably still you've got to bring people in, right? Or people got to come and see you. How do you balance that out?
Well, I really, one of the things that I say to any client who I see, at the onset, your being here is entirely voluntary. I mean, you're here because you want to be here. My schedule is full, so I'm not necessarily trying to hold on to people. And often most issues with stress, anxiety, depression can be and are resolved in 3 to 6 months. I really don't want to see people every week for years. The other part that I would want to say about treatment is that there needs to be an understanding. There really is kind of a four-legged stool. One is that counseling is very important. Sometimes there's a need for medication. I think we also need to look at what our environments are, whether it's work, it's family, it's community, obligations that we have. And then the last, that's often the most difficult for people, is to look at their behaviors, their thinking patterns and their behaviors. What can I change about me? And how do I do that? And those are often, that last category is where I often spend most of my energy working with people.
What do you feel, is there a success rate to this? I mean, or something where you say, when do you feel like you've accomplished something with someone? How do you know that they've hit that 6 months, or they're to the point of like, I think you don't really need to keep coming to see me as much because you seem to be doing okay? How do you know that?
Well, when somebody comes in, we're going to sit down. We're going to talk about what it is that you want to accomplish. What is it that we're here to do? And like Jim said, he'll treat for somebody and it might be resolved within 3 to 6 months. Therapy's not forever. It's not meant to be forever. It's meant to be, you're here for a reason, and let's take a look at what this reason is and what do we want to accomplish during a pretty reasonable amount of time. It might not be 3 months, it might not be 6 months, but it certainly isn't going to be forever. That's not the intended purpose.
How do we get you to a state of health that you define as feeling healthy?
One of the things that I also, I did this week with a client, I've been seeing them for about 2 months, 2.5 months, and they're doing well. They've started some medication, they've made some real lifestyle changes. He got a membership at a gym and is working out. He's dropped about 15 pounds in the 2 months that I'm with him. He's actually going through a divorce, and he's feeling better. And
so you guys are like a diet sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay, sometimes.
And and I just said to him, let's move to every other week for a couple of sessions, and if things are going well, we'll back it down to every 3 weeks or monthly for a while, and then therapy can be used as a supportive system like that, and really the level of service can be modulated up or down as needed. And I'm thrilled when somebody says, I'm doing well, and I appreciate it, and it's been a good thing, and they move on.
So why is there still, I believe there's still a stigma about, people going, I don't want to go to counseling, I don't want to be sitting in this room waiting for my counselor to call me in because somebody might see me and wonder why I'm here. Does that still exist today?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I want to tell you a funny story. I have a young client who's a teenager at Valparaiso High School. And he came in to see me, and another therapist in my office, after my appointment with him, had another student at Valpo High School in the office. And I watched them walk out, and they passed each other, and he goes, "Hey, dude," and he just, they were about 16, 17, I don't know. But it really struck my heart that, there's a generation growing up that they were comfortable, acknowledging that they both were in the same office.
Well, my wife has been a social worker for years, and particularly working with little kids in elementary school, and she'll always chuckle about when one of them walks by and says, "Oh, Dad, that's my therapist." And she's just talking to him at school. So do you still see that stigma, or how do you overcome that? What do you say to people to help them? Say, don't be so anxious about coming in to see me?
Well, one of the things that I tell them is that, in my opinion, I feel like therapy is good for anybody, because we all need to have somebody where we can talk about something and get an unbiased opinion about it, because we worry about things. As a population, we worry about what people think about us. We worry about what we're doing. And with social media being what it is, we are on all the time. So that contributes to a lot of anxiety. Somebody says something on Facebook, or there's something that's happening on Twitter, or
Public humiliation
and
yeah,
it causes
attacks and
people a lot of stress. And certainly, it's a big issue among teenagers and high schoolers. But it isn't just high schoolers. It's anything that has to do with Facebook or social media. One of the things that I tell people is that technology is our friend. It's also our foe. And if you're reading too much into technology and you're spending too much time with technology on social media and whatnot, it's likely going to cause some anxiety.
Do you think things are more difficult for people today than they used to be, or it's pretty much the same?
One of the things that I think is that things come at us at a much faster and immediate rate than they ever did with technology. As Susan was saying about technology, we are expecting more of ourselves to do it faster, to do it quicker, to be responsive to more things. And I just, multitasking is, this idea that's out there. And I really think there's a limit to how much, the human brain can do at once. And that is part of
So it's
technology.
probably not as an increase in that stress and anxiety and so forth. It's just the bombardment of it constantly. It's constantly in our
And
face.
the 24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the expectation
Of
that you've
being
got to be able to
responsive.
handle it all and handle it well, like everybody does on TV or whatever, right? So
Right.
all those magazines that say you should be this and you should be that. So if there's a message you wanted to give to people out there, our viewers, to hear and understand about people who've got kind of these everyday problems, what is that message? We're down to about a minute.
For me, real quickly, is, help is available, and supportive counseling and strategies for dealing with, depression, stress, and anxiety are readily available. It is very treatable, and we really need to access help when we need it.
What's your final message?
Don't be afraid to reach out for help, because if you have the support, you're going to be much more likely able to get through whatever it is that you're dealing with.
Well, you are the kind of people that I think our viewers watching this will go, I think I could come to one of them and probably talk to them and probably be helpful to me. So I hope our viewers will also tell their friends, some of this information. Thank you both for being on here today and helping me with my anxiety and my depression and my stress today when I screwed up the opening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Today's show was about stress, depression, and anxiety. I want to focus my closing thoughts on stress. Knowing that just about everyone suffers from stress, it occurred to me that our current methods of medication and counseling are working for some, but not for others. It seems that in times past, let's say 50 to 100 years ago, people did not seem to be so stressed out. Maybe they handled it differently. Perhaps we should go back to the old methods of coping with stress. How about kicking the dog? Well, you probably love your dog deeply, and he is not some old mutt that wandered into your yard and keeps the stray cats away. And someone will probably call the ASPCA and report you for animal cruelty. You could take it out on your wife or husband. You could yell, scream, perhaps a little rough stuff. No, that's called domestic violence, and those actions will get you arrested. Besides, it's not moral to hurt another person. Drinking, there's the answer. You could head down to the local watering hole and hang out with all the other stressed out people. Throw a few down, blow off the worries, get stinking drunk, then drive home. Wait, the local law enforcement officials are waiting for people like you, and you might hurt someone. Too much of this activity is called alcohol abuse or alcoholism. I know, go outside, find a brick and throw it through a window. First of all, how many loose bricks are laying around? Second, you realize you will have to pay for that window? Another bad idea. Obviously, I am not coming up with any acceptable methods for dealing with stress. The old days provide us with little or no direction. Maybe you had better go see that counselor. Read about healthy ways for stress management, or here's a unique idea, get rid of some of the stress in your life. Thinking about eliminating stress sounds stressful to me. What are you going to do? As always, I want to hear from you. We welcome your comments and thoughts about the content of this program. I particularly would like to hear what more you might have wanted to hear from our guest today. You can email us at focus@lakeshorepublicmedia.org or reach us on our website. If you have an idea for a topic or specific guest for Lakeshore Focus, send that suggestion to me. We're always looking for interesting content. Join us next week for another Lakeshore Focus. Until then, I'm Keith Kirkpatrick saying, make a positive difference in our world today.
Programming is supported by NIPSCO. Today's young minds are constantly reimagining what our world will be like tomorrow. That's why NIPSCO is upgrading its infrastructure now, so we're ready for whatever comes next. More information at nipsco.com/future.